This trip would take me from Glendale to Seattle, a total of 958 miles. 5:30 in the morning and I arrive at the Burbank Airport for my trip to Seattle. Artwork of a P-38 Lightning in the airport. They still board the airplanes the old-fashioned way at Burbank. In no time at all, I was in my assigned seat and we were taking off. As the plane turned, the Pacific Ocean came into view. The plane flew over the seemingly endless collection of houses and buildings that makes up Los Angeles. As time passed by, I began to get hungry. I started fantasizing about what kind of breakfast they would be serving on the plane. Maybe pancakes with bananas, chocolate, and peanut butter in it. Or eggs, hash brown, and crispy bacon. Or maybe blueberry French toast with special blueberry butter. Needless to say, reality did not meet up with my daydreaming expectations. At least the view from the window wouldn't disappoint me. Yikes! I must have fallen asleep. Instead, there was Mount Shasta looming in the distance. Not long after that, Crater Lake came into view. Before too long, we started losing altitude, and before you knew it, the magical, ultra-modern city of Seattle came into view. After hooking up with my cousin Larry and his wife Susan, Larry and I decided to take a walk around the area. Soon we were down at the shore and looking across the bay to the landmark of Seattle, the Space Needle. Somebody having fun on the water. We were both hungry, so we stopped at the Luna Park Cafe for a late lunch. The inside of the Luna Park Cafe was a hodgepodge of odd signs and decorations. I settled for one of the appetizers, which turned out to be 2 chili dogs with onions. Larry got a hamburger with all the trimmings. Speaking of food, the next morning, the homemade waffle with fresh fruit at Larry and Susan's was enough to make a pig squeal. After that delicious breakfast, we went over to the water taxi to head on over to Seattle and do a little sightseeing. Our first stop was to the Olympic Sculpture Park, a 9-acre outdoor modern sculpture museum. There's the famous Space Needle in the distance. And here it is framed in the artwork titled The Eagle. This one is titled The Wave. All of that art appreciation worked us up an appetite, so we stopped off at the Top Pot Donuts for some coffee, and what else? Donuts! So busted. Next, it was off to that Seattle landmark, the Public Market Center. The guy plays a mean saw, doesn't he? You know all of those Starbucks you see on every street corner? Well, here's where it started. This is the original Starbucks. It was just a little bit busy at the City Market Center. While there, we stopped off at the famous Pike's Place Fish Market, where fish are thrown from employee to employee. Next door is Post Alley, which is a brick alleyway wall covered in used chewing gum. Parts of the wall are covered several inches thick, 15 feet high for 50 feet. After that, Larry and I headed over to Safeco Field to watch the Seattle Mariners play the Boston Red Sox.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never go back.
After watching the Mariners prevail over the Red Sox, we headed back home. Larry finished packing the car and we all headed to our first campsite at Anacortes. We all got a good night's sleep in preparation for a trip to Lopez Island the next day. There's no bridge to Lopez Island, so we had to take the car ferry. There's our car, the second one with the kayaks on it, waiting to load onto the ferry. But first off, we went to the Cheesecake Cafe to pick up a little breakfast. The owners of the store have collected humorous signs from all over the place. Larry and Susan enjoying the Cheesecake Cafe breakfast. In a short time, the car was loaded on the ferry and we were on our way to Lopez Island. There's another car ferry headed back to Anacortes. A couple of tourists and some crazy guy. Before long, we were docking at Lopez Island. First thing we did was head to our campsite. There's our campsite, right on the beach. After getting everything set up, we headed over to Lopez Kayak to see what was available for rent.
Yo-ho, a pirate like me. We're beggars and blighters, and there's no well-catched drink us and be money yo-ho. I would wear them by our mommies and that.
Larry and I did some double kayaking. Then we all settled down to a nice, relaxing evening and a beautiful sunset at the campsite. The next morning, we headed over to Holly B's Bakery in Lopez Village to sample their famous cinnamon rolls. Sure, the roll was loaded with sugar, but we ate it mainly for energy for the kayaking trip. Honest. While waiting for the kayak store to open, Larry seems to have spotted something in the water. Is that the Loch Ness Monster or just shadows in the water? Soon we were getting our gear on and kayaking in the water. It was a blast.
Yo-ho, a pirate like me. We're beggars and blighters, and there's no well-catched drink us and be money yo-ho. I would wear them by our mommies and that drink us and be money yo-ho. Yo-ho, yo.
After the kayaking, we headed over to the rugged Sharks Reef Sanctuary. Next on our to-do list on Lopez Island was a stop off at Agate Beach. Back at camp, I saw something, but now I'm not so sure. What the heck? Larry, did you just see? Susan? I guess I'll never know whether it was Bigfoot that I saw, or was it just a byproduct of those wild mushrooms that we'd snacked on that afternoon. That night, we were once again treated to a magnificent sunset. The next morning, it was time to leave Lopez Island. Here we are boarding the car ferry to return to the mainland. Mount Baker in the distance. I'll zoom in on it. Time for some lunch at the Calico Cupboard in La Conner. Further down the road, we stopped off at a roadside market and we all picked up an ice cream cone. I'll put this monster up against anything that Baskin-Robbins sells. Anytime, any place. Later, we stopped off at Kerry Park for an excellent view of the Space Needle and downtown Seattle. Here's an extreme close-up of the Space Needle. Larry and I rode the monorail over to the EMP Museum. Just outside the museum stands the Seattle landmark, the Space Needle. Built for the 1962 World's Fair, the Space Needle stands 605 feet high. The museum itself was designed by Frank Gehry. One of the first things to greet you as you enter the museum is the original Robbie the Robot from the movie Forbidden Planet.
You are a robot, aren't you?
That is correct, sir. For your convenience, I am monitored to respond to the name Robbie.
Just beyond Robbie was an artwork that was made completely out of different types of guitars.
Let's see if this still looks like
There was an exhibit at the museum for the Rolling Stones. In the science fiction part of the museum, they had Captain James T. Kirk's chair and Tribbles from the episode The Trouble with Tribbles. Here's a group of ray guns that were used in different sci-fi movies. The model spacecraft used in the movie Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Well, that's nothing from this world.
The head mask used in the movie The Creature from the Black Lagoon. One of my favorite exhibits in the science fiction part of the museum was the Imperial Dalek from the Doctor Who series. Soon it was time to leave Seattle and head back home to Glendale. That's Mount Rainier in the distance. Here's the view from the plane, flying over some snow-covered peaks. Flying over Yosemite Valley, that's famous Half Dome down below, 8,835 feet high. It didn't take long and I was back home, flying over the greater Los Angeles area. Now I just had to hope that traffic wasn't too bad and I'd be home in no time.